Stephen Van Alstine is the Vice President of Education at the Canadian Payroll Association. He spoke with us about emerging issues in payroll for 2011. What are some of the emerging payroll issues for 2011?
So one of the big things that practitioners are often looking for are what are the changes from a reporting perspective or to the actual forms themselves. And there's really not a lot of change on the T4 side. There's some huge change happening to the T4A for the 2010 reporting year. And the T4A is sort of caught up with the change that was done to the T4 a few years ago. And so that T4A has changed to that generic style form as well. And the Canadian Payroll Association took that opportunity because for a number of years we've been trying to encourage the Canada Revenue Agency to change the reporting of the retiring allowance from the T4A over to the T4. And a big part of the reason why is that oftentimes practitioners, payroll practitioners who are creating T4s are really only having to report retiring allowance amounts on the T4A. So that might be the only reason why they have to do that form. So by moving that requirement, that reporting requirement over to the T4, it eliminates the need to have to administer that separate form. The summary and all of those aspects of T4 production, T4A production. So the retiring allowance has in fact moved over to the T4 for the 2010 year and moving forward. We oftentimes will provide feedback to the Canada Revenue Agency when they're proposing any big changes to forms and any reporting requirement changes. This year, one of the changes that was made that they kind of slipped in was reducing the size of the employer name box. And in doing that, they shifted some of the other boxes around, even moderately, and that's caused some difficulty with production of T4, T4As, and then the envelopes that those go in. And in some cases, the social insurance number was potentially being exposed in windows of envelopes. So those are some things, again, that practitioners have to be aware of. The government in general is moving to putting a lot of the information online, encouraging a lot of electronic tools that assist practitioners in trying to interpret legislation and determine the value of certain benefits or certain tax values, statutory deduction requirements, through things like PDOC, the Payroll Deductions Online Calculator, and other types of calculators like some taxable benefit calculators like Automobile Taxable Benefits Calculator, Gifts and Awards to determine when a gift and award might be or might not be taxable, parking tool determination, when parking may or may not be a taxable benefit. Oftentimes then, some of the things that will change how a particular item might be perceived from a taxation perspective would be tax court cases that happen that can change the status of something. And earlier this year there was, earlier in 2010 actually, there was a big tax court case that involved the assessment of the payment of certain wage loss replacement plan benefits and the pensionability of those benefits. So dependent on whether or not the plan is controlled or would be classified as a wage loss replacement plan is going to be indicative of whether or not the monies that are paid out of that plan are classified as pensionable or not, subject to CPP. So that's a big thing that practitioners need to be aware of. What is your wage loss replacement plan at your organization, and what are the potential impacts of this tax court ruling as a result of that? So again, as I say, 185 pieces of legislation nationally for payroll to be aware of, not only from a taxation perspective, but also from workers' compensation perspective, employment standards perspective. I really only scratched the surface. It just reiterates that payroll is a very dynamic area, and you need to really be aware of sort of what's going on and what the implications might be for your organization.